Up until I was about 17, I used to drink like a fish. And I didn't know why. I was like, why am I so depressed? Why is that?
And like the next morning you'd be like, oh my God, like tell me what I did. Like, was I so funny?
And I used to tell doctors that their charts used to catch on fire. They'd say, oh, how many do you have a day? And I'd say, well, if there's a carton in the fridge, I'll drink it.
As long as you're fun and like you're offering people a good time, I genuinely think they don't notice.
The drunkest, the quickest at every event. My name is Sarhys Page. I'm a loving partner, I'm an auntie, I'm a sister.
Ben, I'm a shift worker. I make beer and wine bottles and food jars. It's mind-numbingly boring, but it's non-stop, we don't stop.
My name's Grace. I'm a fashion designer right now, part-time. I'm trained as a teacher, but yeah, fashion is my passion.
My name's Dylan Pettit, and at the moment I'm on the disability pension with schizophrenia. This is Ollie Boy, my baby. A few of my mates think I'm a bit of a weirdo for how much I love him, but I don't care, I love him to death.
I had a great childhood, pretty idyllic for the most part. My dad was an alcoholic when I was growing up. So that was just kind of, he was never like an aggressive or raging alcoholic at all. He was just always drinking. He was known for just always having a long neck in a brown paper bag with him wherever he went, bless his cotton socks.
The son of a Vietnam vet, and he went straight from the war straight into the police and brought all that home. But also alcohol was heavily, this is the 70s, early 80s, alcohol was the norm. The women stayed inside and made salad, and the men went out the back and got blind, rotten drunk at the barbecue. I mean, that was normal.
When I was 8, my father actually died, and my mum was pregnant with a 3rd child. So I think that's where like a lot of my independence and passion for like teaching has come from. And then I think I've just spent adulthood trying to find myself after that out in the world.
2 years old, I lost my father to suicide. That was a big hit on the family. There my mum was with my stepdad, they're still together today. My stepdad, he's a hard bastard, but he's a good bloke, you know, he's the best to my mum. So I'm very grateful for him in my life, you know, he's a very good role model. I just wish I listened to him a bit more growing up, you know.
I think it's indentured, encouraged, it's cultural, it's acceptance, it's normal. I'll give you an example. If you're standing around at a barbecue and you're on orange juice, everyone kind of steps back. You're either the designated driver or you're pregnant, that's it.
I've had groups of like 15 people, half of them I've never seen them sober. I've never seen them not at a party or a pub. They just don't really do anything else outside of that. Even I'm hanging out with a friend after this and it's immediately like, okay, we'll meet at the pub.
So then flash forward to this recent zero alcohol stuff. It's for other people. You're holding this stubby to make other people feel comfortable.
So yeah, I just think I'd want our country to consider more that our habits are not really the same around the world.
Newcastle's a great place to grow up, but it is it's pretty quiet. It's like a large beach town, but it's not quite a big city. So we did all start drinking at a pretty young age. It was about 14. Back then it was really easy to use fake IDs. I remember one night in particular, we went out to this bar in Newcastle and we all were in the car park around the corner. And I had a guy that I was friends with in my sister's year, so 2 years older, and he would take one of us in, we had one ID between us, and walk into the bar, and they would find a spot to sit, and then he'd walk back out to the car park with the same ID, get the next girl and take them in, and there were 8 of us that used the same ID. And that was pretty consistent, from starting, we just continued to drink all the way through.
I was just a sad teenager. I know we're all really angsty, and because I was so independent, I didn't really understand. Everyone was going through it. So when I turned 18, the second I turned 18, I was like, cool, I'm gonna try alcohol. And I was like, whoa, you're not really sad when you have this.
Addiction, use, misuse, full-blown addiction. I probably started with sneaking some wine from the goon box out of the fridge at a very young age. And then it became the social norm with a circle of friends. However, I'd probably go harder than the rest. because once that occasion or event was over, then I would continue by myself, or usually by myself, until lights out.
I feel like me, more than everyone else, was more like, let's get in as much as possible, as quick as possible, to blackout. So I've always been, from the beginning to the end, a blackout drinker, and always the drunkest, the quickest at every event.
I started smoking pot when I was about 13, I think, 12, 13. And then I got heavy into it about 14, you know, smoking cones every day, wagging school, doing all that, hanging out with the hooligans and that, you know what I mean? And that was all cool, you know. I experienced a little bit of paranoia with the pot a bit, but nothing too hectic. Not until I started smoking ice, which was when I was about 16, 17. And that was a 10-year journey on the ice, pretty hard. Psychosis hit maybe 2 years in, to the point where I remember one night I thought I was going to get thrown in the boot. I could hear the boys going, "All right, he's there, you know, get him, fucking pull up, rah, rah." So I'm like, fuck. So I started running. And I'm running through the streets. I'm trying to get away from this invisible car that's not even there. And then I hear this faint voice in the distance. It was my mum going, Dylan, you know? And she was so scared for me. I put her through hell, mate, you know?
I remember one night I went out and I think I made friends with the bartender. And I literally, and this is like part of me thinks maybe my drink was spiked, but I actually don't know because I used to drink to excess, so it's hard for me to know. But I remember waking up / coming to in like someone's apartment with this guy that I don't recall ever seeing in my life, and I had no bag. And because I was so far from home, it just made it so much scarier. That was pretty terrifying.
I was always confused why certain people could get to a limit, and I had no limit. So a lot of people used to say, I'm sure you've heard it, maybe come in for one if the weather's hot. Come in for one. I never found it refreshing. Like water's refreshing. On a hot day, water, lemonade, that's refreshing. I find the flavour of alcohol, namely beer at the start, yuck. I never drank for refreshment. I drank for oblivion, you know. And I used to tell doctors, their charts used to catch on fire. They'd say, "Oh, how many do you have a day?" And I'd say, "Well, if there's a carton in the fridge, I'll drink it." "No, I mean a day." So I'd say, "Well, 24 or whatever," until I couldn't get up anymore, usually out like a light.
It got to the point where I lived alone by myself in an apartment in Melbourne for I think the final 3 years, and was drinking every night, and I always had like someone that was available to hang out with, to drink either at a bar or a pub, or come over to my place and I'll make us drinks kind of thing. But it was when I was like really drinking every night, and to blackout too, and like sad drinking, which I think is one of those times when you kind of like reflect on like, oh, I've been low for a period of time, and like the only coping mechanism I have, or I feel like I have access to, is just drinking at night.
The hardest part of addiction, man, is that feeling. I think it's just that trying to fill the emptiness in your soul, and the drugs are just a temporary fill for that, you know?
I started planning. I planned my calendar around having that gap of time after any kind of event. So whatever it may be, children's birthdays or whatever, reunion, whatever. I would plan that the next day wasn't a work day. And sometimes I got quite creative and not drank, so that we can get home, dot all the I's, cross all the T's, kids to bed, everything's done, and then I would go outside in the garage or something and not affect anyone.
I wouldn't continue in the morning, no. So I was never someone that would get up first thing and drink. That is something that I realized later when I decided to stop drinking would be something that people would use to kind of invalidate my experience. Oh, but did you like get up and like drink before you went to work? Oh, well then you were fine. So that's something that through my period of sobriety, I've come to realize you don't actually have to be someone that does that to have a problem.
Indications that things need to change would be missing key dates or being discluded or just assume that you won't be there because you'll be out like a light, or you can't take him because he'll just get smashed and embarrass everyone and himself.
This gang stalking and this thought broadcasting was so real and is so real to me that I believed everything was a setup. So it got so bad that I committed suicide. I attempted suicide twice, one of which I had to be revived. I remember the volume was up too loud for me, and I was like, I can't do it anymore. And I just remember hearing my grandma scream, and then woof, 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 I was just out. So anyway, long story short, I rang the rehab. It was Australia's strictest rehab, but I had to fly interstate to get there. My stepdad helped me book the flight, and the next day I was on the plane to WA.
I started really noticing all of my friends were like achieving all of these amazing things. The thought that someone could plan their future was wild to me. How do you have the energy to do this?
No money for necessities, babies' nappies, rego, food.
No energy to do anything, no desire to do anything. It was just like work, drink. I remember the question of people asking like, so what do you like doing on your time off? Just being really uncomfortable because I never had an answer for it. I was like, is drinking an answer? Drinking.
You normally get your happiness or something out of achieving something. So you get that chemical boost, like, yes, you're achieving something. So for us addicts, why work hard when you can just go, or stick it in your arm?
Well, I had a few kind of very weak attempts before because I recognized it was an issue for me. I knew it was, but I wasn't ready to discover who I was without it, because being literally quote unquote the life of the party, I guess, that was always a really big part of my personal identity. People would introduce me kind of in that way, and there was an expectation that I would always be up for anything and always be entertaining. I need to stop drinking, but I really wasn't ready to never drink again because the thought of that terrified me.
You know how when you're a kid and you get a favourite TV show, or you get your favourite toy and you play with it, and you're just so infatuated with it and you love it. You used to get that feeling when you're sober, before drugs, but when you get on the drugs, that feeling just slowly it's further and further and harder to reach. So when you're sober and you're off it, that feeling it's all the way over here, and you're trying to pull it back to you, and it just doesn't come. So you get back on the pipe again, and there it is, and straight away you're back. You got that feeling again.
I remember once, many occasions, but I remember one time I said, "Oh, you guys can drink. Come over, we'll get on it. I'm choosing not to drink," as a failed attempt. And they came over, and it was just crickets. I think there was a carton of Coke and a carton of lemonade, and they're all standing there going, "Oh, what next?"
There was an incident that made me make the decision, and I was living in Melbourne, but I'd come to Sydney for a friend's birthday. She'd hired an Airbnb, and she was like, "I've bought all the alcohol and all the food, and everyone is welcome to come and stay and just enjoy yourselves." And I set myself the goal of really trying to just I think it was just responsibly drink, and just free booze for someone with a drinking problem is not ever a good thing. I just drank to oblivion, I guess, and I just didn't remember the night, and I woke up and I was just that gut sinking feeling of I had one night with my friends and I couldn't do it, and I was so disappointed in myself. I don't know if it was in that moment or on my way home, but that's when I decided I was gonna have a break for a month. I didn't really have that many issues in that first month. It was kind of after that I decided I feel like I can do it and I wanna move the benchmark. So that's when I moved to a year. And it was wild.
It's hard. I have all these plans to get clean and stuff like that, and I do. I get clean for a week, and then I'm like, and then something bad will happen, they'll turn the volume up, and I'm just like, oh, well, what's the point, you know? Like, what's the point, you know? I might as well just keep living this lifestyle, you know?
I've probably cut drinking out like 4 times by myself. I don't really go to the doctors. They don't really seem to mind that much either. They say, oh, you're just young. So yeah, I've cut it out like 4 times, and I try and ease back into it. And 3 of those times it's gone a bit off the wagon again.
0, nothing. In March, we're coming up to 3 years sober, but it took, roughly 30 years to get there.
You know what's really helpful is Facebook statuses, because sometimes the memories will pop back up and it will remind me at a point that I was at in my life. And I have the first post I did ever about my sobriety was at the 6-month mark. But I remember it was about 6-month mark, and I'd been, I don't know, maybe working out consistently for like 4 or 5 months or something like that. And I had already decided at that point, I was like, well, I'm done. I know I gave myself a year to make this decision, but so many things had changed for me at that point that I was like, I can never go back. My life is infinitely better. So my dad, he had tried unsuccessfully a couple of times to quit over the years. One of the main reasons my dad finally quit was his best friend, who is my best friend's dad, passed away in a freak motorbike accident. It was horrific and completely devastating for everyone around him. And he was, sorry, this is gonna get me emotional, one of my dad's biggest supporters. And Daryl was one of the people that always really encouraged my dad to stop drinking, because he kind of saw what it had done to him, I guess. And I feel like when Daz passed away, it felt like my dad had almost like that push to be like, and I'm not even sure if we've really talked about this, but I feel like it would have been, Daryl has left his family. He didn't have a choice over that. And part of me feels like Dad felt like he needed to stop drinking because that's something he had control over. So he quit, and even though he had tried unsuccessfully a few times, he decided and he was done. So I feel like that's something that came from that, which was so powerful in completely changing my dad's path. Oh, it's not true.
Absolutely made me a better communicator. Absolutely given me some kind of goal or purpose.
Naturally, you have a bit more energy. Making that decision has been the complete foundation of this whole new life I have built. And that is why I make it such a big part of my personal brand and personal identity, because I'm like, that's what I have to thank for everything I've built. I wouldn't have this if I hadn't have made that decision. I have no idea what I'd be doing or where I would be, but it would not be here at all or anywhere near it.
I like to look at it as a train ride, yeah. So I feel like the train ride is coming to an end, and I will be getting off, and I'm gonna do something big, I guess my main goal now is just keeping me and Ollie, my dog, happy and fed and safe.
I just want to be part of the world, have a job, have good relationships. I don't want to have to rely on substances to get by. Doing
a course in drug and alcohol counselling, so that I have that piece of paper on the wall, but I also have a 30-year lived experience, and I think that's what I can offer some value to anyone who is struggling with that imbalance. And so in that middle part, in that imbalance, they turn to anything that will give them oblivion or access to a bit of quiet space. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.